Welcome to Asbestos Awareness Training. Let's start with what we'll learn today. We'll look at how to choose the right PPE based on the specific hazards you face. Understanding the hierarchy of controls is key to keeping ourselves safe. Think about when and why you need head protection, like hard hats for falling objects. We'll cover eye and face protection, why safety glasses and face shields matter against debris and splashes. We'll see how and when to use hearing protection to prevent long-term damage from loud environments. Respiratory protection protects us from breathing harmful dusts, fumes, or gases. We'll talk about the right gloves for your hands and what types are best for chemicals or cuts. Safety shoes and boots help us avoid injuries from sharp or heavy objects on the ground. Finally, we'll look at vests, coveralls, and other protective clothing that help shield our bodies from different hazards. By the end, you'll know how to match the right PPE with the job and hazard. Asbestos is still everywhere in the United States. Asbestos causes lifetime disabilities with diseases like asbestosis and mesothelioma. Thousands of people die a year from asbestos exposure. It's important we protect ourselves from exposure to asbestos. This is awareness training about asbestos hazards and best practices to avoid exposure. Why is it 2 hours long? Labor and Industries requires workers who work in areas where they could be potentially exposed to asbestos to have 2 hours of training annually. You are about to know more about asbestos than you ever thought you would. Washington State requires this training for workers in WAC 296-62-077, asbestos, trimolite, anthophyllite, and actinolite. Class 4 asbestos work means maintenance and custodial activities during which employees contact but do not disturb asbestos-containing materials or potentially asbestos-containing material, and activities to clean up dust, waste, and debris resulting from Class 1, 2, and 3 activities. We will learn more about the other work classifications under the asbestos standard later. What you need to know now is to protect workers who perform maintenance and custodial work in buildings containing ACM or PACM. The following training is required. 2 hours of awareness training with an Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, equivalent curriculum. This training will include locations of PACM, ACM, asbestos-containing flooring materials, or flooring materials where the absence of asbestos has not been certified. It will help you to recognize damaged, deteriorated, and delimitation of asbestos-containing building materials. We will discuss the health effects associated with asbestos exposure, the relationship between smoking and exposure to asbestos, the methods of recognizing asbestos in quantity, location, manner of use and release, and the engineering controls and work practices associated with your job assignment. In addition, you will learn about the purpose, proper use, and limitations of protective clothing, the purpose and a description of our medical surveillance program, information about smoking cessation programs, the requirements for posting signs and labels and the meanings, and the purpose, proper use, limitations, and other training requirements for respiratory protection. We can get through all of that in 2 hours. For all Class 4 work covered by this standard, your supervisor must designate a competent person, as defined in WAC 296-155. The competent person must be trained, as a minimum, in a 16-hour operations and maintenance course for asbestos work. The competent person must perform frequent and regular inspections on the job sites, materials, and equipment related to asbestos work. In addition, the competent person must be familiar with the handling of asbestos appropriate for the nature of work. This is not a competent person course. We are going to circle back around to some of the agencies and regulations about asbestos work. Labor and Industries takes asbestos-related worker safety serious. Enforcement for asbestos-related activities comes on 2 fronts: environmental safety and worker safety. On the environmental side, federally, the EPA makes the rules and has state and local agencies provide additional enforcement. In Washington State, the Department of Ecology enforces asbestos rules through local clean air authorities. These agencies regulate asbestos projects, fees, and disposal requirements. On the worker safety side, OSHA is the federal agency who makes the master worker safety rules. However, states that have been approved to have their own worker safety programs, like Washington State, may enforce their own regulations. Washington has some of the strictest rules in the nation in the Labor and Industries rules for asbestos maintenance, removal, and encapsulation. On the worker safety side in Washington State, L&I has two rules affecting employers. The first is WAC 296-62-077, asbestos, tremolite, anthophyllite, and actinolite. This rule covers workers who are exposed to asbestos in general industry and construction. WAC 296-65 is the safety standards for asbestos removal and encapsulation. This chapter is specific for those employers who perform work on asbestos projects, such as asbestos building inspectors, supervisors, and workers. Note: utilities are required to be a licensed asbestos contractor before performing any Class 1, 2, or 3 asbestos work. A little more on the environmental side, these federal and state rules apply to schools and public buildings. AHERA Asbestos Hazard and Emergency Response Act. ASHARA Asbestos School Hazards Abatement Reauthorization Act. NESHAP National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants. The basic goal was to identify asbestos in buildings, inspect and maintain it so no fibers would be released to cause harm to the public. Where possible, grants and projects were introduced to remove asbestos from schools. For more information, http://www.ecY.wa.gov/air/local.html. A little more on the environmental side. These federal and state rules apply to schools and public buildings. AHERA Asbestos Hazard and Emergency Response Act. HSARA Asbestos School Hazards Abatement Reauthorization Act. NESHAP National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants. The basic goal was to identify asbestos in buildings, inspect and maintain it so no fibers would be released to cause harm to the public. Where possible, grants and projects were introduced to remove asbestos from schools. For more information, http://www.ecy.wa.gov/programs/air/local.html. All renovations in Washington State require asbestos surveys before beginning. When the project involves more than 48 square feet of ACM or 10 linear feet of AMC on pipe, it requires notification to the Department of Ecology, Local Clean Air Authority, before beginning. The Local Clean Air Authority for Chelan County is the Ecology Central Regional Office in Union Gap. Communications of hazards. Before starting a renovation of any public or private building, regardless of the year built, building owners are required to obtain a written asbestos survey completed by an AHERA building inspector. Results of the survey must be shared with any contractor performing work so they can determine if their workers will be exposed to asbestos-containing materials during the renovation. Labor and Industries fines. L&I can impose a minimum $600 per day fine for failure to obtain an asbestos survey. This fine can be applied to both the contractor and building owner. Additional fines may be applied if employers are not complying with all applicable safety and health standards. More information at lni.wa.gov. After an asbestos survey or a hazard analysis that identifies asbestos-containing materials, supervisors must communicate the presence of asbestos to all employees. We do that at the PUD by posting warning signs for regulated areas, listing specific materials on signage, listing areas where employees may come into contact with asbestos, attaching labels to all products and their containers that contain asbestos. If asbestos is dangerous, why was it used so extensively? Asbestos is a naturally occurring fibrous mineral in several different forms. Its properties include good tensile strength, flexibility, and insulating abilities. It is also heat, electrical, and chemical resistant. Used extensively in the past, even as snow in movies. Flooring materials in the 50s almost all contained asbestos. Common types of asbestos include chrysotile, white asbestos; amosite, brown asbestos; crocidolite, blue asbestos. Less common types of asbestos: tremolite, actinolite, and thopholite. As we learned before, asbestos can be really cool when it's not trying to kill you. When asbestos is bound within a product, it poses little danger, but when the product is friable or breaks up, tiny invisible asbestos fibers are released into the air. Asbestos fibers are easily breathed in by workers while working with materials containing asbestos. A look under the microscope shows why we would not want these sharp, elongated fibers in our bodies. Asbestos fibers are deposited in the ending small air sacs in the lungs called the alveoli. The body's defense mechanisms cannot break down the fibers, and scar tissue forms around the fibers. As scar tissue builds up, the lungs function less and less efficiently. The fibers may also travel to the pleura, the membrane lining the outside of the lungs, causing a similar problem. We will talk about the diseases asbestos can cause in more detail. Health hazards. The diseases caused by exposure to asbestos include asbestosis, mesothelioma, lung cancer, other cancers. Symptoms may take 15 to 30 years or more to develop. This is called the latency period. Health effects may continue to progress even after exposure to asbestos has stopped. Fibers can enter the mouth and be swallowed. Asbestos fibers can enter the mouth and be swallowed. Poor hygiene, leaving food, drinks out in contaminated areas, and carelessness can result in the ingestion of asbestos. The following cancers can be related to ingesting asbestos: esophagus, larynx, oral cavity, stomach, colon, kidney. Asbestos exposure is bad, but compared to smoking, you have about half the risk of developing lung cancer. On the other hand, if you smoke and work with asbestos, your risk is 50 to 90 times higher than the average person of getting lung cancer. How asbestos can impact your health depends on the following: amount of fibers inhaled, length of exposure, whether exposed worker smokes, age because of delayed effects. Stopping smoking is the best thing you can do to prevent lung cancer. The following organizations provide smoking cessation information and program material: the National Cancer Institute, American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, American Lung Association. We are now going to look at some examples of asbestos. The majority of the uncredited pictures are from Labor and Industries Asbestos Awareness downloadable course. So far in the course, we've been using terms about asbestos in a general sense. We are now going to look at the technical definitions of some terms related to asbestos. Asbestos-containing material means a material or product containing more than 1% asbestos. Potential asbestos-containing material means thermal system insulation, surfacing materials, and flooring found in buildings constructed no later than 1980. Some definitions say prior to 1981. Surfacing material means material that is sprayed, troweled on, or otherwise applied to surfaces, such as acoustical plaster on ceilings and fireproofing materials on structural members, or other materials on surfaces for acoustical, fireproofing, and other purposes. Thermal system insulation means material applied to pipes, fittings, boilers, tanks, ducts, or other structural components to prevent heat loss or gain. Flooring includes tiles, carpet backings, glues, and mastics used in installing flooring. Regulated area is an area established by the employer to demarcate areas where Class 1, 2, and 3 asbestos work is conducted, and any adjoining area where debris and waste from such asbestos work accumulate, and a work area within which airborne concentrations of asbestos exceed, or there is a reasonable possibility they may exceed, the permissible exposure limit. There is the assumption that all building products can contain asbestos. Asbestos was banned in some new products in 1980. It is not banned in all products, nor was it banned in many Canadian-made products until 2020. Some of these products found their way to the market. Therefore, it makes sense that products are considered to be asbestos-containing materials, ACM, or potential asbestos-containing materials, PACM, until they are tested and proved to be asbestos-free. We will talk about testing for asbestos in a later slide. Asbestos has been used for centuries, but greatly increased during and after World War II in places like ships and buildings. The following materials have a high chance of containing asbestos fiber: pipe insulation, surface insulating materials, reinforcement of materials, fireproofing, acoustic and decorative plaster, textiles. Sprayed-on fireproofing, sheet vinyl, vinyl asbestos tiles or VAT, especially in the 9-inch size, that were manufactured before 1981 are all assumed to have asbestos in them. In fact, all flooring, including carpets, glues, and the mastics that they were installed with, may contain asbestos. These are called presumed asbestos-containing material, or PACM. You must test to prove they do not have asbestos. OSHA has an interpretive memorandum on mechanical means for vinyl asbestos tile removal that can be accessed here. While in operation, the Libby, Montana mine may have produced 80% of the world's supply of vermiculite. Vermiculite is not asbestos. Vermiculite has been used in building insulation and as a soil conditioner. Unfortunately, the vermiculite from the Libby mine was contaminated with a toxic and highly friable form of asbestos called tremolite actinolite series asbestos, often called Libby amphibole asbestos. EPA's investigation determined Libby amphibole asbestos to be present in indoor and outdoor ambient air, vermiculite insulation and bulk materials, dust, soil, water, animal and fish tissue, and various other media. In 2002, the whole town became a Superfund site in an attempt to clean up the exposure. The project was completed in 2018. However, zonalite is still found in many old buildings in the Northwest. The town of the Libby, Montana is the deadliest Superfund site in the nation's history. Health officials say at least 400 people have died from asbestos-related diseases caused by the W.R. Grace mine. Damaged pipe insulation is a health hazard to persons working around it, handling it, or removing it. Asbestos fibers are visible on the torn edges in the middle picture. Non-damaged pipe insulation does not pose the same hazard. Damaged pipe insulation must be repaired by a trained asbestos worker. Asbestos millboard was used in the construction of walls and ceilings, especially around furnaces and wood-burning stoves, where insulation and fire protection was required. It makes an excellent fire barrier. Most varieties of asbestos millboard typically contain between 80 and 85% asbestos. Millboard is often found in industrial labs. Gaskets can contain asbestos. Gaskets can be found in industrial facilities, labs, and vehicles. Asbestos roofing materials were commonly installed from the 1920s to the 1970s. Shingles, corrugated roofing, felt paper, and tar paper can contain asbestos. It is rare to find asbestos in newer roofs, but they still need to be tested to prove they are free from asbestos. Cement asbestos pipe, sometimes called transite, was used underground and above ground in years past and may show up in pipe replacement jobs, building demolition jobs, or excavations. Employees must stop work if they excavate transite pipe and contact the safety department. Some underground pipes are also wrapped with asbestos thermal system insulation. Do not disturb wrapped pipes without confirming the insulation is asbestos-free. Asbestos was found in various types of ceiling tiles that were manufactured up until the 1980s. The tiles were originally white, but may have yellowed. pay particular attention to one-by-one ceiling tiles that are glued to the ceiling. However, any size ceiling tile, including 2x4 sizes, can contain asbestos. Do not disturb ceiling tiles that contain asbestos. Asbestos shingles and siding was found in older buildings, not to be confused with newer asbestos-free cement siding. There is little hazard with the siding if it is in good condition unless you are removing or repairing it. This siding was very durable and may be on older buildings in our area. The top right-hand picture shows a siding replacement job with broken green asbestos shingles, which would have released dust and fibers into the air if done incorrectly. Popcorn ceilings, also known as acoustic ceilings, were popular in many homes built from the late 1950s through the early 80s. Not all popcorn ceiling material contained asbestos, but some did. Many types were more easily dislodged than others. Removing popcorn ceilings is considered the most dangerous class of asbestos work, Class 1, because of the ease of spreading the dust. Popcorn ceilings must only be removed by licensed asbestos contractors with certified asbestos workers. Some joint compounds contained up to 5% asbestos. Older plasters in lav and plaster construction also sometimes contained asbestos. Labor and Industries has additional guidance on employee exposure to joint compounds in the DOSH Directive 23.30. At work, keep your eyes open for labels showing the location of asbestos-containing material, ACM, and the related health hazards. Asbestos can be found in duct sealants, silver paint, valve packing, gaskets, insulation, electrical barriers, light fixture gaskets, pipe wrap, and pipe flange gaskets. Other materials may contain asbestos, especially in renovations. Make sure all building products have a good faith survey before proceeding with a renovation. General products where you may find asbestos include pipe insulation, surface insulating materials, reinforcement of materials, fireproofing, wallboard, acoustic or popcorn ceilings, textiles and fabrics, vinyl, asbestos tile, VAT, soft vinyl backing, adhesives, gaskets, joint compound and plaster, roofing shingles and felt, elevator equipment panels, elevator brake shoes, HVAC duct insulation, boiler insulation, breaching insulation, ductwork, flexible fabric connections. All of these products need to be tested for asbestos before disturbing them. Though not specific to our area, it is interesting that asbestos can be found naturally occurring in our state. The Sumas Mountain landslide near the headwaters of Swift Creek in Whatcom County, Washington, releases up to 120,000 cubic yards of excess sediment into Swift Creek each year. The slide material contains deposits of naturally occurring asbestos that can become exposed when water levels in the creek are low, when the creek is dredged, or when floods deposit material on banks and adjacent properties. Let's look at engineering controls and work processes for Class 4 asbestos work. Housekeeping. Building maintenance and work activities may expose workers to asbestos fibers if ACM or PACM is disturbed. Pay particular attention to materials of concern: gaskets, vinyl, asbestos, tile, popcorn ceiling, exposed, pipe insulation exposed, fireproofing. Make sure you do not disturb ACM or PACM while sweeping, vacuuming, cleaning, changing lights. If you see broken tiles, exposed insulation, exposed gaskets or fibers, or dust from surfacing insulation or acoustic ceilings, contact the safety department. You will need additional respiratory protection and work processes to clean the area or complete the work. Here are some work practices you will need to follow. Avoid touching or disturbing equipment, gaskets, ceilings, walls, flooring, and other structures covered with asbestos materials. Never pin or hang pictures, plants, or objects on walls or from ceilings covered with asbestos-containing materials. Do not dry dust or sweep surfaces, ceilings, walls, or floors that contain asbestos dust. Do not sand asbestos floor tiles or backing material left behind from asbestos floor tile removal. In other words, don't disturb any asbestos-containing materials. Let's learn a little bit more about what is considered an asbestos project. As a worker, you should be able to recognize asbestos-containing material and potential asbestos-containing material. Once identified, you should be able to recognize if employees or contractors are properly handling the materials. The next few slides will give you an overview of what is required for asbestos work so that you can recognize if you are safe or not. How much asbestos matters? Any disturbing on asbestos-containing material, ACM, which is defined as material containing more than 1% asbestos by weight, or presumed asbestos-containing material, PACM, is considered asbestos work. The exception would be if you have testing to show the PACM is free of asbestos. Contractors performing asbestos work must have continuous air monitoring. A sampling pump uses a cartridge to collect air samples. Workers wear a personal air monitoring pump with a hose to their breathing zone where the cartridge collects particulates in the air. The cartridge is then sent to a lab to determine exposure. The exposure is compared to the permissible exposure limit, PEL, for asbestos. The PEL for asbestos is 0.1 fiber per cubic centimeter during an 8-hour on a time-weighted average. The short-term exposure limit, or STEL, is 1 fiber per cubic centimeter during 30 minutes of exposure. Air monitoring data must be kept for 30 years after employment for each exposed worker. What is an asbestos project? It includes the construction, demolition, repair, remodeling, maintenance, or renovation of any public or private building or structure, mechanical piping, equipment or system involving the demolition, removal, encapsulation, salvage, or disposal of material, or outdoor activity releasing or likely to release asbestos fibers into the air. Asbestos projects must be completed by asbestos contractors. Asbestos work has 4 basic classifications. Class 1 asbestos work means activities involving the removal of thermal system insulation, TSI, or surfacing ACM or PACM. Class 2 asbestos work means activities involving the removal of ACM, which is not thermal system insulation or surfacing material. This includes, but is not limited to, the removal of asbestos-containing wallboard, floor tile and sheeting, roofing and siding shingles, and construction mastics. Class 3 asbestos work means repair and maintenance operations, where TSI and surfacing ACM and PACM may be disturbed. Class 4 asbestos work means maintenance and custodial activities during which employees contact but do not disturb ACM or PACM, and activities to clean up dust, waste, and debris resulting from Class 1, 2, and 3 activities. What is required for Class 1, 2, and 3 asbestos work? Employers who work with asbestos must have asbestos contractor's license, asbestos supervisor and worker training, current certifications, a medical surveillance program, a respiratory fit test and training program, personal protection equipment including full body suits and respirators, air monitoring equipment, and a full decontamination plan. Employers must have a lot of attention to detail, consistent staffing, and good insurance. Asbestos work is difficult. Employers who perform asbestos abatement must have a medical surveillance program for all employees exposed to airborne concentrations of asbestos fibers at or above the PEL. Tests include pulmonary function test, chest röntgenogram, examination of all cardiovascular and gastrointestinal systems, yearly checkups. Employers who have employees who wear respirators must have a written respiratory protection program that addresses respirator selection training, medical evaluations, fit testing, respirator storage, cleaning, maintenance, and repair, respirator program evaluation record keeping. Asbestos work has specific respiratory protection requirements for Class 1, 2, and 3 work. You will get additional respirator training annually in another training course. Supervisors must make sure a regulated area is established by the employer to demarcate areas where Class 1, 2, and 3 asbestos work is conducted. It must include any adjoining area where debris and waste from such asbestos work accumulate, and any work area where airborne concentrations of asbestos exceed, or there is a reasonable possibility they may exceed, the permissible exposure limit. The regulated area must be demarcated in any manner that minimizes the number of persons within the area and protects persons outside the area from exposure to airborne asbestos. This is usually done with plastic barriers or negative pressure enclosures. All work done in regulated areas must be supervised by a competent person. Access must be limited to asbestos supervisors, asbestos workers, or other authorized inspectors. Each person entering the regulated area must have the appropriate PPE, respirator, and training. No one should eat, drink, smoke, chew tobacco or gum, or apply cosmetics in the regulated area. Once work is completed in a regulated area, a decontamination corridor must be established. This may include a shower and change room. Airlocks will separate each section of the decontamination corridor. Again, this is for Class 1, 2, and 3 work only. But it's good to know what's involved. If you see work that could be disturbing asbestos, and you don't see all the proper equipment and personnel, call the safety department ASAP. Employers must inform other employers of the existence and requirements of regulated areas. Asbestos hazards at a multi-employer work site must be abated by the employer who created or controls the source of asbestos contamination. In addition, all employers of employees exposed to asbestos must take steps to protect their employees, regardless of who is creating the hazard. Employers must protect employees working outside regulated areas and take steps daily to confirm the integrity of the enclosure and the control methods. General contractors have authority over their sites and must require such contractors working with asbestos to comply with this standard. So what do asbestos classifications have to do with me? Maintenance and construction work around asbestos-containing materials and potentially asbestos-containing materials is considered Class 4 work. This course was designed to help you recognize and avoid asbestos-related hazards. However, it does not allow you to disturb ACM or PACM. Congratulations! You have completed the online portion of this training. To get credit for this class, take the asbestos exam on your Toolr app.